Welcome, software engineers, to day 28. Oh, this is our very last regularly scheduled day together. This is our new hire, Eric. He used to be a computer programmer for the CIA. Hi, I'm Dilbert. I know, I've been watching you through your devices for years. You what? I mean, hi. Good. We've had a couple guest presenters, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to have more because I think it's very helpful for us as students to get a sense for, what are people really doing out there? So I've had a couple guest presenters that have given you a very academic perspective, and I'm just delighted today to have, this is my sister, Connie Benson, and her official title at One Incorporated is BC. That's Big Cheese. She says it's not. She's the person on the left. That's my granddaughter on the right. My sister lives in California, so she's in the same time zone as you guys, just Northern California. She was out last month. She took my granddaughter to a Broadway play in Chicago, The Lion King. All right. So, Connie, I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to turn things over. Oh, no. You know what we're going to do? I am going to stop the share, but I say I'm going to do it and I still can't do it. What I really want to do is I want to start off by asking you a couple questions. And students, by the way, if you have questions that we go along here, jot them down. You feel free to put them in chat. I'll look at them, or at the end, I'll let you unmute and you can ask away. Okay. So first of all, Connie, would you introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about your background and work experience?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Gary. This is really exciting for me. I'm going to tell you about all of my background because it got me to where I am today. And as you'll see, I've taken a few twists and turns. So I originally went to college to be an elementary school teacher, a liberal arts major. And in my last year of college, I needed to get some income. So I had the ability to get a full-time job, and I actually went to work for a large insurance company. I answered their phones back when we used to actually have switchboards. I ran the switchboard and worked my way up into a few different positions there. And at some point I realized this is a great opportunity for me. For something about the insurance industry really clicked with me. And I am definitely what you call an insurance nerd. So I ended up being in the insurance industry for just over 25 years. And I worked just about every position you could in various types of insurance companies, whether they were actual insurance companies that you hear like Geico or USAA, or it might be an agency that sold insurance directly to people. I just had the opportunity to work in a lot of different areas with a lot of different types of insurance. And I was really blessed in that. I didn't know at the time why it was going to be so important for me, but the insurance industry is pretty volatile and tends to go through a lot of layoffs. And I escaped, I think, in my career, 6 layoffs, but I got caught in the very last one. So at the time, I was actually working in sales for large customers in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the company I worked for, Allianz, actually closed down the line of business that we were working on. So they stopped writing these personal auto policies. They didn't need me to go sell them. I took a much needed break at that point. And then a friend of mine who actually owns his own software consulting firm said, Connie, there's a real opportunity. I know of this position where they're looking for a business analyst that knows insurance. And I said, great. What does a business analyst do? I had no idea. And he said, just go talk to these folks. And the most intimidating interview of my life, I go in, there's a table of all of the leaders of this organization. It was at that time a small but very fast growing software firm. And we just talked about insurance and their products. This is One Inc., the company I'm at now. I'm currently VP, but I did not start as VP at One Inc., I will tell you that. We actually provide products to the insurance industry, and they have great developers and great product managers, but they didn't have anybody that really understood insurance or could teach the technical folks about insurance. So imagine you're developing software for a widget that you know nothing about. You're very constrained, and it can definitely lead to design implementation disasters. So I said, okay, I'll come work here, put me on the support desk so I can learn a little bit about the product and the technical side of things. And I stayed in support for about 1.5 years. And then a few other positions, but I'm now the VP of our policy management product. So all of the things that I learned, going to school to be a teacher, learning how to communicate, working in the insurance industry in various capacities, really set me up well to manage this policy management product. And what our product does is issues the insurance policies for your personal auto. So if you go online to Geico, you get a quote, you push the button, you put your credit card in and you say, I want to buy this policy. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the background. You have to have your insurance documents. You have to set up your bills, right? You have to know when to pay. You have to be notified about that. You have to be able to make a payment and post it. So that's what our software does in the background. And it is the most complex product that we have at One Inc. It is not the largest by far, but it is definitely the most complex. So that's a little bit about me, just in the role that I do. My team, I have a team that consists of support techs, account managers, product managers, and then I also manage all of the implementations for new customers. So it's a busy, exciting, and varied job. No 2 days are alike, for sure.
I appreciate especially what you said, Connie, about all your previous experiences really helped fill in the details and really prepare you for your current job. I found the same thing, and students, I think you'll find that also, that you may wonder sometimes, I don't know why I'm doing this, but oftentimes God's preparing us for future endeavors, for sure. Okay, so Connie, you started as a business analyst, and so you know a lot about connecting the business side to the technical side, especially explaining that to them. In this last unit of software engineering, we are discussing software deployment. So after it's actually been created, getting it out to either the client or use, and maintenance. So I want to ask you 2 questions. First one is, from your perspective as a current vice president and with business analyst background, what issues do you experience with software deployment?
It's a really good question, and something to be very thoughtful about. I was thinking about this a lot, and the biggest issue that I come up against is miscommunication or lack of communication altogether. So here's an example. I have a customer, a very large insurance company that writes a ton of policies with us, and we have to make a deployment for them. Maybe there's a bug fix or critical bug fix that has to go out. And I might get notice, or server maintenance, this is a good one. I might get notice on a Thursday, and developer or the deployment team says, hey, we need to do some maintenance on Friday night, or we need to deploy this quick fix. Well, I can't go to my customer with less than 2 weeks notice, really, and let them know that the system is going to be unavailable. So our system is unavailable during deployments. That means they can't sell insurance policies during that time, right? And that affects their business. So over the years, I've learned to be very clear with the deployment team and to work very closely with them, so that if they know in the next quarter they're going to have scheduled maintenance or some sort of an enhancement that they need to roll out, maybe a technical enhancement, I have the proper documentation and enough time to notify my customers that, hey, the system is going to be down. So that's a big one for me. And it may not be something that is thought of as much on the technical side, but from a business side, it's really critical. The other is unexpected results, of course, of deployment. So making sure you have a good rollback process. We did not the first few years that I worked at this company, and we worked hard to implement a rollback process so that if something went sideways on us, we had an alternative and we could get that rolled back very quickly. And then, of course, I wouldn't say missing deadlines as much as a deployment for us, if it's a large deployment, may take longer than expected, and again, cut into the customer's business hours. So we've had some real issues with that, where we expect a deployment to be done at 5 a.m. Pacific, and it may take until 11 a.m. Pacific. So my customers lost 3 hours of the ability to insure, to write new insurance policies, and that's been an issue. So we're very careful about when we deploy and starting as early as we can without interrupting business hours.
Great. So we in class have talked a lot about the importance of communication, being effective, being precise, et cetera. So I'm glad you brought that up. Miscommunication, lack of communication, a big deal. It's interesting. One thing we did not talk about, which is a very good point that you brought up, is what about rollback? So if you do deploy an update and it, in your terms, goes sideways, well, what are you going to do? You have to roll back to the previous implementation, the previous revision, and run with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good. So let me ask you a similar question about maintenance. So your perspective, business analyst, project management, VP, what issues do you experience with software maintenance?
So for us, it's probably the most difficult thing for us is balancing maintenance with enhancements, or what we call feature requests, and having enough resources to do both. It's a struggle for us to be able to resource the maintenance. So there's, infrastructure that has to be updated. There's architecture that has to be updated. Even though we're growing and we're growing at a good clip, it's always a juggle between satisfying that customer need to get something as quickly as possible. But we need to update .NET or something like that. And how do we fit both items on and dovetail the roadmaps so that we can do both? And then again, the other things, Gary, are what we've discussed around software deployment. A lot of it is the same. It's making sure our customers are aware of what we're doing, making sure that the software maintenance is documented and we keep history around it. These are all things that we've learned over the years as we've grown to be as large as we are, because we suffered through times without that.
Good. What programming environment and programming language does your team work with predominantly?
We are a .NET shop, and we still, I think the developers are using C++ as well. We use Microsoft SQL for the database administration. And I also have, what's interesting about our product is we have integrations with many third parties, which is part of the discussion when you're doing deployments as well, right? We call out to various either state agencies or industrial agencies that give us reports on, say, I'm going to pick on somebody here. Tanner goes and wants to get his auto insured. He puts in his driver's license number and his date of birth. And we go back and run driver's reports of any claims that Tanner may have had, other people that live in the house or apartment with Tanner. Those are things, integrations, independent integrations that we maintain. So there's a lot of different technology there. Interesting.
So one of the things that students experience this semester is using an external API. And just to give them a little sense for what you're doing there is a lot of connections to a lot of other systems and trying to figure out how to interface with them.
That's absolutely correct, Gary. And we also have folks wanting to use our public API to be able to integrate with whatever platforms they may have. So the other side of our business, which is the biggest revenue generating, is all about payments processing. Not necessarily for just my policy customers, but for hundreds of insurance companies and agencies, MGAs and things. And we process, I don't know, probably close to $1.5 billion payments a month now. And each one of those customers typically uses our API to integrate with a different policy management system. They may not use ours, they use their own. So they're actually using our APIs to be able to make the user experience whatever they want it to be on their end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great real world practical illustration. Thank you.
You bet.
So, as someone who not only works with computer scientists and programmers, a lot of technical people, but what do you wish that computer scientists / programmers understood about the process of software development before they come to a company, maybe learn here in school?
Yeah, I think there's the one thing that I go back to, and this is probably because of the role I've had at One Inc., is communication and documentation. And I know we've mentioned that already in this call, but it's critical. We as a company have to manage our customers' expectations of how this software is going to work, when it will be available, what it looks like to them, what their user experience is. And I've had opportunities. What I would say is I would hope or wish that your getting in the customer world, students would have the opportunity to be a part of a discussion around that specifically. What role does a business analyst or a product manager play, or what role do I play as the customer advocate in actually doing requirements and specifications? I mean, I get involved in that often because of my industry experience or customer relationship. It's not done in a vacuum. So it really is collaborative where we are. I would love for students to have that experience, to be able to maybe be exposed to a customer, maybe one of my customers, and say, you know, what is it like as a customer when you're going through a deployment or when you're requesting new features? It's important to understand that, because you might be tempted as a developer to go in and say, okay, well, I see the specifications here, but I think we're going to make this little change because it'll make it better. And I have real world experience of this. And the problem is that's not what the customer expects and not what they signed off on, right? So that's one example of communication. I just think that it's really critical to understand what the end user feels as they're using your product, and also to be really close to your product managers and product owners, so that you understand exactly what they are asking and that everybody agrees. One of the things that we've implemented just in the last quarter with a customer that was difficult for me, who I had a very hard time managing scope with them. We started a practice where if they have a new enhancement feature request that they want implemented, we actually have a 2-hour workshop with them and their technical folks, as well as business folks, and with our business folks and a developer or a product owner. And we go through exactly what they want, what the end result should be, and then we agree upon how we're going to get there. And that has been huge. It's been really a great improvement for us. Just in the last quarter, that relationship has turned around 180 degrees. So I know that's rambling a little bit, but it's been proven to me that understanding your customer is really helpful as you go through the software engineering process. It's critical.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we do talk a lot about requirements, specifications, and understanding why there's a problem, and really communicating with the user and the client. And I like the term you use, to manage their expectations, because technical folks, we think, oh yeah, that's what they want. And the user thinks this is what I want. And sometimes we don't mesh, do we?
Absolutely. And the other part of that, the other side of that, is sometimes the customer doesn't really want what they're asking for. And that's where having somebody with industry knowledge has been helpful for us. They may want the user to experience X. And when I say, well, why do you want that experience to be X? And we start digging into it, I realize, oh, you're actually asking for Y. So let's talk about how Y can actually meet that need for you. Now, a good business analyst, product manager can have those conversations, maybe not always with the customer, but always be thinking about, is this really achieving what the end user is expecting?
Yeah, great point. Sort of the difference between what the client wants and what the client really needs.
Right.
They don't always know what they need. We sort of have that perception of a want. Yeah.
And that's another great reason to understand your customer as much as you can. Now, obviously, you'll have a lot of demands on you as you go out into the workforce, but understanding the industry that you're getting into as much as you can will earn trust and just foster respect much faster.
Excellent. One thing that I know students don't especially care for, but I do make them do in this class, and that's work as part of a team to solve a problem. What's your perspective working in industry? Teamwork important? Should students learn about working in teams before coming to their employment?
Absolutely, Gary. Absolutely. I know of no industry where software development is done in a vacuum. That again, you can tell just because I manage both support and product, and I work very closely with the developers. We have to work as a team, and we have to be able to communicate and be respectful. And I think that what's really great about working at our company is we actually hire as much for who you are as what you can do. Company culture is king at One Inc. So we interview folks with panel interviews, and we probe from different areas. I tend, of course, to always go more towards the soft people skills, but it's really important that you can work together. If you are trying to do something in a vacuum, you're not going to succeed in this industry. I don't believe you will. So there are a few things that we do a bit differently. We are an international multicultural organization. So we actually do some cultural classes, some teamwork classes. I put all of my folks through the, what's the name of it? I can't remember now. Through a communications course on critical communications. I probably have it on the shelf behind me. But we focus on those things. We do a lot of courses through Litmus and LinkedIn as well, just to make sure that folks are comfortable working together and you learn from each other. I mean, my team is amazing. I've learned so much from them. Remember, when I came to this job 8 years ago, I knew nothing about tech, nothing. So I would call you, Gary, if I had a computer problem, right? So I never would have gotten to where I am in the specific position I'm in without working closely, not just internally, but with external customers as well. Mm-hmm. And it's also more fun. It really is.
Sure. Connie, you mentioned soft skills, and one thing that I talk about in class often is I call them aspects of professionalism, what used to be called soft skills or emotional intelligence. And I try to convince my students that these are very important. And I think you would agree?
Absolutely. Again, the reason I have the specific folks on my team are not just because they're excellent at what they do, but they're excellent at how they present themselves, whether it's to a customer or not. And I'll give you an example of why this is so important. We have one gentleman in our organization. I think he's actually from Russia, and he does not have soft skills. Now, he runs all of our database operations. He was the developer that actually built our databases, and he manages that team. And occasionally I'd have a customer that would have some very specific questions that I could not answer. So I'd put Sergey on the phone. Well, the first time I did this, the customer asked a question and he said, "Well, that's stupid. Why would you do that? You don't need to do that." And my face fell, and I immediately jumped in and redirected the conversation. But imagine as a customer how you would feel if somebody had said that to you. You're expressing a business need and they say, "Well, that's stupid. You don't need that." It would feel the same if one of my team members was talking to another and said, "Well, that's a stupid idea. We're not going to do that." That's just not how we communicate. And I think that especially now where so many jobs are remote, most of my communications are Zoom or Teams, just as we're doing now. It's very important to have those to have character aspects of your personality that allow you to connect with people, even if it's only for 5 minutes in a quick scrum. You need to be able, in my opinion, to keep your cool, to listen, to consider, to offer your input as well, and realize that not every idea that you have may come to fruition, but that you're being heard.
Yeah, good. And that's a great illustrative story there about the importance of soft skills. You just mentioned Scrum. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process at a high level that you
Sure.
follow?
Sure. So it's a pretty loose agile environment right now. We're a bit of a modified agile, but we're moving to a more structured agile environment. So what we do, we have small sprints. We have usually 2 sprints in a release cycle. We do demo the product to a customer along the way during those sprints to let them see how far we've come. Do we need to tweak the UX? Is there something that we need to change in the specifications before we deliver this to you? And that's been very helpful as well. Another thing that's interesting about what we do and may be different than much of the computer science industry is we have a few specialized folks that transcend multiple roles. So I have 2 people on my team that are business analyst slash tech writer slash QA. And I don't know how typical that is, Gary, but it gives us a lot of flexibility to have an individual that can do a lot of different things. They actually do a lot of on-page coding as well, like word coding. And we really depend on them to be able to make sure that our documentation and our solutions are crystal clear. And again, the environment of our company is a little different because we are international. That's not uncommon at all. It's just new for me. So we've spent a lot of time learning about other cultures and trying to make sure that we can connect with each other so that we do have a daily scrum. We call it stand up, but it's a scrum, making sure that it's an effective 15, 20 minutes, whatever it might be. And as a leader, one of the things that's important to me is knowing the people you work with, the team, understanding who they are, and appreciating them for who they are. I know kids, I've visited babies in hospitals and congratulated folks on vacations. I mean, that to me is every bit as important as the end result, because I want to work in a place where I enjoy working with the people I do, and we have a common goal. I should have mentioned, by the way, this is the first organization I've ever worked for that would allow us to do Bible study on premises. Both of the co-founders are Christian and have really embraced the Christian ethics that have helped us to be successful. And that's another reason I think it's really important, going back to communicating with each other and teamwork, is to make sure that you're living that doctrine.
Yeah. Wow, that's excellent. You mentioned some folks that have sort of a multiple role, and that's not that unusual.
Okay.
Software engineering students, it's not unusual at all. And it actually makes you a little more marketable too. If you're good at testing and you're good at architecture and you're good at whatever, companies will enjoy that, to be sure. I do want to come back to the Christian worldview aspect and how you think that may help in general. But before I end with that, let me ask you, Connie, your perspective of the job market for technical people right now. What do you think it's like?
For us, we are always looking for talent, and we're having a hard time actually finding developers, mostly developers that fit into our culture and also can do the job as effectively as needed. So the pandemic threw all of us into a bit of a tailspin, our industry as well. Moving to a remote environment, that it just had a big impact on us. If I need to hire somebody today, I want to be able to interview them, or I should say, if I need to hire somebody, I want to be able to interview them within a day or a week. It's taking us on average a month now. So I think for you students, the market is unlimited. I see so much on LinkedIn, so many positions. Everybody seems to be looking for folks in this industry right now. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, Gary.
That's good to hear. What advice would you give a student? How should they go about, after graduation, getting a job?
So if you're lucky, you may already have some connections in the industry, but likely that's not the case yet. So I think LinkedIn is a really good resource because so many companies are depending on their social media presence now. There's so many jobs to be found, but I will say the way that I got this job was really wonderful as well. I went through a recruiter that had that job posted, and that recruiter 8 years later still calls me and says, hey, I have this opportunity. Are you interested? Or, hey, I'm looking for this person. Do you know anybody that would fit this role? It's really good to connect with somebody who's master at placing you. And it doesn't cost you anything typically. It costs the employer a little bit more, but finding a good recruiter here in Northern California, Robert Half is one that's really popular. I'm not sure if they have a Southern California footprint yet. I'll have to go on and look, but I know they are international. So you should be able to look at somebody like a Robert Half to see what the opportunities are. They also did a great job of grooming me for the interview because they knew One Inc. They knew our co-founders, and I felt very prepared when I went into that interview.
Nice. I'm going to ask you one final question, but I want to let students know if you have any questions, think of them now. You can put something in chat, or when we're done, feel free to unmute, but I'll be sure to give you time to do that. So, Connie, last question. Can a Christian worldview really affect the job of a business person or a technical person in a positive way?
Absolutely. Just as I mentioned, just the ability to live your spirituality at work and demonstrate it with whatever you might want in back of you on a Zoom meeting. We had Bible studies together. That really kind of brought us closer as a team. You know, when you get into this industry, you're going to hit a lot of tough challenges, no matter what role you're in. And there's going to be a lot of pressure to have resolution on those quickly. And I found that working with folks that were Christian and being able to demonstrate that in our daily life made it much easier for us to hunker down and work together to find solutions. That's one example where I think it's great. And the other is really just the ethics of it all. Ethics are critical in this industry. It would be very easy to do shortcuts and have a subpar product that kind of worked and maybe didn't, but you don't care because you're on to the next project. That's just an example of where I think ethics are really important. Living your beliefs and designing things or coding things or testing things in a way that you feel is really good for you and the organization is going to be very important.
Excellent. Thank you. So, student, you may not, but any questions for BC, the big cheese at One Inc. here?
I'm going to put that on my digital business card.
Put that on there, please. Yes.
Or if you don't agree or you want to discuss any of the items that we've mentioned, I'm certainly open to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll give folks a few moments here if you want to post something in chat, or feel free, you can just unmute. I don't think you'll step on anybody's toes. You don't have to do the raise hand feature. Questions?
To communicate effectively, is there a specific application or software you guys use, or do you simply do like in-person meetings or email?
That's a really good question. So we tend to stay away from email as much as possible unless there are a lot of people involved in the conversation or customers involved. We rely heavily on Teams. And I know there are folks that use another tool. It used to be Skype back in the day, but Teams is where we do most of our communicating and where we have all of our internal meetings other than the occasional all company meeting. Zoom is the other kind of part and parcel with communication. I do think regular communication is very important as well. So even if I'm not working with a team member that day, I'm going to send a quick note, maybe even to the whole team to say, hey, happy Wednesday. We're halfway, through the week or something like that, just to keep that camaraderie going. You're going to need that. You're going to need that as you're tackling the bigger issues. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Good question. And if students, if you don't know, Teams is a Microsoft collaboration product similar to Zoom. Any other questions or comments or challenges here? Sure hope I can read my notes afterwards. There were some good things here, and I wanted to.
I appreciate that. I'd love to get one of my team members on with the class of yours at some time too. That's
yeah.
always available. Okay?
Yeah. This is my fault, and I told my students that I usually love to have former students come back on, but we're just having such a hard time making a connection here, and I should have thought about you and some others that can actually encourage their developers to come on and chat with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I can make that happen.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
thanks, Kyle. I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, you bet. Okay. So Connie Benson, thanks. Oh, and I was expecting TJ and Lozen to visit us. Those are Connie's dogs. Oh, are they? Is one of them down there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure if you can see them, but they're both down there. They just blend into the beds.
Okay. Yeah. Sound like Bull, who my dog be up barking, but they're good dogs.
I have to have them in here with me or they will bark. So
Right. Right.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thanks. It was great to speak with your class, and give my sister a big hug for me, okay?
I will do that. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Connie.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Folks, thank you for your rapt attention. I appreciate it. I hope that you found that useful. I'll just ask you, as I've done the last couple times, in a little poll here. You don't have to do it this second. We are going to take a break, though. But if you didn't think that any of this was, that won't bother me at all. If you say, no, it wasn't interesting or informative or anything like that. I just like the feedback. It'd be helpful. I don't know what kinds of people to get involved here. And yeah, if you weren't with us at the very beginning, Connie Benson is my sister. That's her on the left there. She took my granddaughter to a play in Chicago just recently. She does live in California. I see her every now and then here in the frigid north of Wisconsin. All right. Thanks for doing that poll. Let's we're about due to be able to stand up, don't you think? Okay. So let's stand up, take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to review some things in preparation for the upcoming exam. Take a minute, stand up, do jumping jacks. We'll be back. Thank you for doing the poll. I'll just do that and share the results. So you could be fooling me, but it is totally anonymous, and I appreciate you letting me know that these kinds of things are helpful. Onward, then. Team assessment. I think the last time I said it was due sometime in the future. I won't be too stickler about that, but Blackboard says it's due today at the end of the day. So if you'll take a look at that team assessment, it is identified not as an assignment number, but really as team assessment. Yeah. I just have a, is that direct? That's a DM just to me. So Michael, I'll respond to that. But yeah, Connie Benson 1 Incorporated. Yeah, take a look at that. Team assessment due today, or if you don't have it today, that's okay. Get that thing into me. The two things you really want to be concerned about are assignment 24, which is sprint 3, the final sprint. That's due a week from today. Now, what's strange about that is we're not meeting a week from today. A week from today is in the middle of final exam week, but this is when it's due. Our exam, which is not a final exam, it is a unit exam. Our exam is scheduled for December 12th. If you look on the final exam schedule, that's when ours would be. If we were meeting on campus in class, it'd begin at 3, end at 5. This is not a 2-hour exam because it's not a final. It is the same size, shape, and format as the previous 2 exams, and it will also be online. The exam will open up early-ish in the morning on Monday, December 12th, and it will close at 8 p.m. on Monday, December 12th. So you find a time sometime during the day next Monday to do exam number 3. We have this exam period scheduled from 3 to 5. There shouldn't be other distractions then, so I would encourage you to do it at that time. We will not be meeting, so you don't have to connect via Zoom beforehand or anything. Today is our last time of formally, officially meeting as a class. Exam 3 will be on your own. Now, if you have a question about that beforehand, I'd be happy to answer those things. We're going to spend some time right now reviewing Unit 3 and maybe thinking about some potential exam questions. Assignment 24, Sprint 3. What do you have to submit? Just like in Sprints 1 and 2, I want to see the full project folder zipped up. Please use zip to archive it. Zip it up and then submit that. It is listed at Blackboard as assignment 24. Okay. No documentation no external documentation. As important as that is, just comments in the code are going to suffice for the documentation for Sprint 3. All right. Let me pause here and see if you got if you got specific questions about your project. I will entertain those at the end. Any generalized question about the 3 remaining things we need to do in class? All righty, if something comes up, you will let me know. Now, you know what? This is a really good thing, but you go back and stop and read it at some time. So as I just mentioned, exam 3 is Monday. Let's review. As a matter of fact, I'm really not trying to fool you with the questions I asked on the exam. I know you may feel differently, but it's been the important points that we've been discussing in this last unit. As a matter of fact, if you think about what we have covered, and you compare that mentally to what you saw on exams 1 and 2, I bet you could predict an exam question. I'd like you to do this. This is a very worthwhile. If you've never done this, just for your own sake, it's sometimes helpful to sit back and think, well, what might that strange person ask me on the exam? Would you do me a favor? Would you think about this for a minute? And then would you put this in chat and just address it to everybody? Just state a potential exam question. You want to phrase it as true, false, multiple choice, or short answer, or just maybe throw out a couple words as a topic. Any one of those is okay. Okay. Yep. The Tanner's got a good one. Kyle, that one is the extra credit one. Go ahead and think about that for a minute and then let me know. What is that? Hmm. 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 Ah, I'm reading. You're wondering, what are the noises? I'm reading your questions. Good. Keep it up. You didn't think of one yet. Put it out there. These are all good, including who is Chuck Norris. And I got to think about the answer to that question myself. Let's review Unit 3. So the exam will focus on Unit 3. You can't forget things. For example, a lot of good questions there, like what is the software development life cycle? What's the goal of software engineering, etc. Yeah, you don't want to forget those things. At the same time, we're really going to focus on Unit 3. So I divided the 3 units of software engineering into idea, implementation, and now Unit 3, interaction, or the power of the application. So one of you said, hey, we should know some things about the SDLC. I agree. Here are the major phases in the software development lifecycle. In this unit, we focused on, first of all, deployment and then maintenance. It's really hard to get a sense of deployment until you're working in industry. I hope you got a little sense from Connie Benson of the, hey, this is a huge task. It's not just, okay, here you go, here's the app. Lots of things we don't think about, like, hey, how do I cut that in? If it takes me 2 hours to deploy it, that's 2 hours of lost revenue for a huge insurance company. That might not work out so well. All right, so let's first of all, oh yeah, you recall that a software development lifecycle is a framework or a structure. Everybody does some form of this, and whether they call it Scrum or Agile or anything else, these are the kinds of things that we're doing. So I'm just pulling out some slides that I've used before, and I just want to mention some things about these various phases. If you have a specific question, feel free to unmute, shout it, or post it in chat. So the deployment phase, here's how we defined it. Software deployment includes all activities ensuring a software system is available for use. Yeah, we saw, and I'll just go through these at a very high level, a number of these activities. But if you think back to exam 1 and 2, you recall that there was a short answer question dealing with each of the phases that we discussed. And the short answer question, somebody even, who said this in chat? What, Ryan? What is the purpose of the deployment phase and how is it carried out? That sounds like a great question to me. Okay, so here's the generalized purpose. Now, in addition, don't forget, everything we do is management. So somehow we're managing a bunch of things. And yeah, that requires some communication. What are the tasks? How is it carried out? What are some of the things? I would not expect you, I think we maybe mentioned 8 or 10 different things. I would not expect you to have those all at your fingertip, but you should have a representative sample, maybe 3 of these things that make sense to you and you understand. Oh, software engineering is the management of the entire software development process. managers plan. For deployment, we must plan the production. How are we going to get this thing out of the developer's machine and into actual usage? See, for us in this class, that was simple. Well, okay, yeah, I know it wasn't simple. But you just grabbed the folder, you zipped it, you sent it up in the cloud. A little bit more to it in industry. Production, distribution. What if you're servicing not just one client, but maybe multiple clients? Or maybe your one client has 24 offices all over the globe. Is it just sending an email message and saying, hey, put this on your server? Distribution. Marketing. Now, Connie Benson, One Incorporated does the problem-solving model. They're not in the opportunity model. They don't just make things and hope somebody comes and gets it. They are solving problems for their clients. And if you didn't catch it, their clients are other insurance companies. You know, the names that you know. Most of those names that you know, they're not really doing the work. They're doing the marketing for sure. How do I get my wonderful project out in the minds of people who might need it? Yep. And even if you're doing problem solving, we still market. We still need to put our best construction and our best foot forward. Licensing. This is one I spent some time with, and I may ask other questions about software licensing. Recall that a license is permission to use or do something subject to certain restrictions or conditions. You don't own the software. You don't own Zoom. You can't do anything you want to with Zoom. As a matter of fact, if now you're using Concordia University's Irvine Zoom connection, Concordia Irvine pays lots of money to use this. You're saying, hey, I can download and use Zoom myself for free. Yeah, but there's limitations. A meeting is limited to 40 minutes. The number of attendees is limited. You don't have all these wonderful features. I don't even know, you may have chat, but you probably don't have polls and other kinds of things. So licensing is permission to use or do with restrictions. And of course, that restriction concerns the copying and distribution of the software. What about a delivery date? You heard my sister talk about, oh, sometimes they don't always make their delivery. Yeah. Hey, is that a surprise, software engineers? The unholy trinity of software development: behind schedule, over budget, full of bugs. That's what we're trying to eliminate. We still are trying to get rid of those things. And good companies are much better at it. But the only way they can get close to the delivery date is by careful management and planning. Payment terms. You could not afford the software that One Incorporated produces. Very high price stuff. These are large corporations, but they don't pay $1 million up front. There's usually some kind of payment plan and payment terms. Warranty. Oh, yeah. Here's where our specifications document comes in. If the specs say this software will do this, and it doesn't, guess what? You get to maintain it. Company, developer, you get to change it because it is under warranty. What are the terms of the warranty? How quickly do you have to change it? That would be specified. Lots of things to think about. And then certainly the limits of liability. What if our software system misbills someone? What if it in electronic funds transfer? What if it loses a few tens of thousands of dollars? What is my liability as the developer of this software? Deployment is more than just saying, here you go, here's the software. Lots of things that need to be considered and managed. And let me reiterate what Connie Benson said. Wow, is communication important? Setting expectations up front with your specifications, and then communicating all through the process so our client understands expectations. Speaking of the next phase, how are we going to handle updates? This is part deployment because you deploy updates. But the main aspect of this we chatted about in the final phase, in the maintenance phase. You're going to miss these, aren't you? When class is over, I know exactly what's going to be happening. At Christmas break, you're going to be home. You're going to be bored. You're going to say, gosh, I wish Dr. Locklear would come and tell me a funny Chuck. No, my students at MECWA don't say that either. A python, now, okay, if you know snakes, you know pythons don't bite people, but I wanted to use it because there's something else here. Pythons just swallow people. They don't bite people. A python once bit Chuck Norris. After 5 days of excruciating pain, the python died. Yes, thank you for those of you that will miss these for sure. Zeb and Zeke are not quite as popular. Oh, this is strange. I went to buy some Camelot. They're funnier when you can actually pronounce the words. I went to buy some camouflage shirts yesterday. Yeah? And? Oh, I couldn't find any. Camouflage, I couldn't find any. Even though this came after maintenance, I think it did it? Or do I have my Roman numerals screwed up? Wait a minute, I gotta look ahead. Now, did this really come before maintenance? Whatever. At some point in Unit 3, we talked about ethical software engineering. Here was my concise definition, how we ought to develop software. Should is sort of a synonym, but I like the word ought, and it carries with it a little chutzpah, how we ought to develop software. Now, as a matter of fact, we've talked about this really throughout the course without necessarily putting the umbrella of ethical software engineering around it. In other words, ethical software engineering is focusing on truth. Does our product do what we say it will do? Then that's one aspect of ethical software engineering. We said our product's going to do this. Does it actually do it? If so, it possesses truth. Beauty. Not only internally is the code understandable, is the documentation lucid. Not only internally, but also externally. Now, don't forget, customers don't see code, but they do see our product in the guise of the user interface. And you heard Connie Benson talk several times about the user experience and how important that is. User experience, that's part of the beauty. We're not just talking about, oh, well, you got to have just the right colors and just the right size of your icons. That's part of it. But really, it's the general feeling for it. One of the heuristics that I mentioned to you was think the way users think. Input, process, output. Left to right, top to bottom, put the UI together in such a way that it matches the mental model that our users have. That's beauty. Goodness, not only does it have truth, not only does it work, but it works well. We create an app that adds numbers. The user types in a letter and it drops dead. And you say, that's not my fault. They should have typed in a number. I say, ethical software engineering says, not only should it add numbers, but it should be good and robust. It will catch and trap inadvertent errors, or maybe even conscious errors that users will make. Is it robust? Is it productive? Is it efficient? Does it do his job fast? That's all part of goodness. Community is legitimately the one that I've tried to shoehorn in here because my president, the Reverend Dr. Patrick T. Ferry at Mequon, said this is his fourth thing. And so community, we're doing that when we build software that actually brings the user in as part of our development team, so they feel like they are empowered and engaged and part of it. And you've had to experience community as part of the team. All right. So the very last phase of the software development lifecycle, maintenance, the maintenance phase. Oh, I forgot to ask Connie Benson the question, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Which phase do you guys spend most of your time in? And the answer is the maintenance phase. I claim that the survey says between 50 and 67% of all the effort in software engineering is spent in maintenance. Huge. What's the definition? Pretty straightforward. Any change to the product, don't forget, product is code and documentation. Any change to the product after the product has been deployed, after the product has been delivered to the client. Oh, how does this sound as a question? Define and I'm sorry, I want to use the right. What is the purpose of the maintenance phase, and how is it carried out? Well, here's the purpose. And don't forget, management is always part of our answer. We discovered that there are 4 major types of maintenance. Type 1, corrective maintenance. This is what most people think of when you hear the word maintenance. And indeed, it's a huge part of maintenance, which is already a huge part of software engineering. Corrective, fix the faults and bugs. Perfective, improvements. Connie Benson mentioned this. They oftentimes get requests from the user. Hey, can it do this? Perfective, adaptive. What happens if my clients get new servers, new hardware, new operating system? Might require changes. The 4th one, this is a hard one, preventative. How can I anticipate what I might need to do in the future and do things today to help mitigate that? Preventative maintenance. So 4 types, you'll remember those? That's good. By the way, you know you're a good software engineer when your program crashes and takes down the development environment with it. I've done this more than once. I got a message one time from somebody on the development team of Visual Studio saying, how in the world did you do that? When there's an error in your code and when it tries to compile, it takes down Visual Studio. Okay, if that happens to you, tell me. I want to send you a virtual badge. Hoorah. Good. All right. We're getting near the end. You know, in the classic interview, they'll ask you, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Chuck Norris has only failed at one thing: losing. Yes, Chuck Norris' weakness is he has no weaknesses. Okay, final pun. The stork delivers babies under 7 pounds. Oh, yeah. Well, what about the heavier ones? Oh, for those, they need a crane. A crane's a kind of bird? Crane. Oh, speaking of babies, in less than a month, it'll be Christmas. Christians, Christmas is a fairly important holy day. Hard to figure out what the greatest miracle in Christianity is. Is it the original creation? Is it the incarnation of God into human form? Is it the flood? Is it? It probably is the resurrection. But Christmas, this is a pretty important one. I asked Connie Benson if, and I asked all the other guest speakers too, does Christian worldview have any impact into what we're doing? And they all said yes. I shared with you before the creative acts of the Trinity. God the Father had an idea of a perfect creation. Unfortunately, human beings purposely rebelled at the beginning. They said, we don't want you to be God, we want to be God. They purposely separated themselves from God. God had every right at that point in human history to say, fine, go to hell. But that's not what happened. Instead, the second person of the Trinity, God the Son, was given the task of providing the energy to come in human form on Christmas, live the perfect life we could not, suffer the penalty we should have on the cross in order to redeem or buy back all human beings. And then finally, God the Spirit has the power to reconnect us. Via the Word and faith, the Spirit reconnects us back to God, getting us back to that original creative state. I'm ashamed to tell you, I don't have the mission statement at Concordia University, Irvine memorized. I do have the mission statement at Concordia University, Wisconsin memorized. Concordia University, Wisconsin is a Lutheran higher education community committed to helping students develop in mind, body, and spirit for service to Christ in the church and the world. That last little bit, by the way, is the same as in Irvine's vision statement. But if you're wondering, students, why am I here at Irvine? This is what we say our mission is. Empower students through the liberal arts and professional studies for lives of learning, service, and leadership. Sounds a lot like vocation to me. Thanks for coming along on this ride. In all seriousness, I very much appreciate you being part of this class. You may or may not believe it, but I learn as much as you do. I love software engineering. I love thinking about it, asking people questions about it, and then figuring out, how does this all fit together? How can we boil it down into something that's understandable, such that you can carry with you some important ideas, not only into other classes, but also into your future vocation as computer scientists. So thank you so much. Oh, and if the truth were known, your tuition pays my salary. And I'm thankful for that also. Someone accused me of having hostile body language. I'm not allowed to cross my arms, stare, or move my eyebrows or frown. Have a nice day. Too late. Too late. I like to end every total class with the Aaronic blessing. Let me say this, please, and then I'm going to stop the recording. And then if you got questions or comments or concerns, we'll do it right now. Oh, I should remind you one more time. Don't forget about doing the team assessment. Don't forget about working as a team to do assignment 24, sprint 3. And then prepare your minds for action on Monday for exam 3. We will not meet on Monday. This is the last time we will formally, officially meet as a class. If you want to talk to me, fine. If you want to jump on Zoom, we can do that too. That's a-okay. Thank you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Thanks so much, students. If I don't see you again, I wish you the best of luck in not only your current and future academic endeavors, but also in your future vocation of computer scientist. Have a great day and a Merry Christmas.